Well, 2020 is almost over. It's November here at the LSU AgCenter Hammond Research Station, and today we're going to show you some plants that are still looking good towards the end of our season. My name is Dr. Jeb Fields, and I'm the Assistant Research Coordinator here at the Hammond Research Station. Along with me is Mr. Jason Stagg and Ms. Ashley Edwards, and together we make up the Hammond Trial Gardens team. So welcome to fall interest in the Hammond Trial Gardens. One of the first plants that comes to mind with fall interest in our garden is Muhlenbergia capillaris, or Gulf Coast muhlygrass. This is a native grass species that really flowers around now in October, late October, November in the gardens. You see these slight pink tones to these panicles. They wisp in the air, as you can see, catching the wind, and really just give a highlight to the garden. White flowering plants are a popular landscape choice these days. So if you're not too interested in the pink muhlygrass, we have these white varieties. This is White Cloud. It's a little more compact, just as wispy. It catches that air, gives you that highlights, but it gives you that white panicle instead of the pink. Caladiums are always a favorite in Louisiana landscapes, but they actually do pretty well into the fall. We've got some pretty cold temperatures at night, and these caladiums are still looking fantastic. This is the Heart to Heart collection from Proven Winners, but many of our Louisiana caladiums are still looking great in the fall right now. Caladiums come in all different shapes, sizes, and colors, so there's definitely a color pattern out there for every taste palette we have in the landscape.
Grasses in the landscape are a really important and underutilized feature, I think. So even at the end of the growing season, when the grass is starting to turn brown and it's put up its panicles and its blooms, look at the architectural interest that this provides. This is a switchgrass, which is Panicum virgatum, and this particular selection is called Dallas Blues. And I love this grass because it'll stay upright all the way through January or February. We'll finally cut it back down in March probably, or late February, and that'll allow the new growth to come up. But these are a perennial grass, and once you plant them, they do great in the landscape and they'll last for years. In the landscape, we often think of grasses as not always being evergreen, but this particular one from Australia is. This is Lomandra grass. There are a couple of different species out there, and this particular one actually likes our wet, humid climate. You have to be careful though, because some of them don't and they won't adapt very well. A lot of different Celosia varieties will give you a really big punch early in the summer or in the midsummer, but this particular one called Dragon's Breath just keeps going until first frost. Tropical plants in Louisiana can provide a lot of late season color because they never stop growing as the summer goes. The hotter it gets, they just keep growing. And Tibucinas are one of our favorite plants here, and I really think they're underutilized in the landscape. I mean, look at this intense purple color. Has a nice growth habit. Now they won't survive a freeze, but even though they're just a one-year plant, it's really important to start using things like this in the landscape.
The fall 2020 Louisiana Superplant induction is the bald cypress, or Taxodium distum. And there could be no more superplant that we can think about. This native tree is a fantastic mainstay in Louisiana in the south. It's native to our area, so it takes really wet soils or really dry soils. It can handle the heat, it can handle the cold. Pretty much anywhere you want to put a tree, the bald cypress will make it. One of the most iconic things about the bald cypress are the cypress knees. Now, while some people have issues with these knees, people have questions about them, they are part of the cypress tree and a fantastic park weed, think. They're just really neat looking, they have a great aesthetic, and you can just see what the characteristics they bring to a landscape. Once more, they set off a little area around the bald cypress tree where they grow that fills in annually with the needles as they fall. So these needles actually have this nice rust color to them as they fall. They create natural mulch that just looks fantastic. It really highlights in the landscape and sets itself off from other areas. So one of our mainstays in the garden is Florida Sunshine Anise, and this is an Alyssium parviflorum cultivar. It's got this really bright chartreuse color gold that stays almost year round. So you can see in the summer it's really more of a yellow chartreuse. It turns a little bit hints of green as we move into the fall, but still a beacon in the garden. Everyone loves it, everyone talks about it. You can see how great it grows, the good form, and not too many issues with any kind of pests or anything.
I wanted to show you another species of tibicina that we have here. This is big leaf tibicina, and you can see why it gets its common name. Look at the size of these leaves and look at the velvet nature of the leaves. They really catch the sunlight. So even if this didn't bloom, this beautiful purple color in the fall, you would still have this great architectural piece in the landscape with these giant leaves. And now there's about 5 or 6 species of tibicina that we can commonly find around here, and we usually plant most of those in the garden each year. Look at this punch of color for the fall landscape. This is coral drift rose, and it's one of the many colors available in the drift rose series. These really bloom all season long, even if you don't prune them, and they usually stay a pretty reasonable height in the landscape, nothing as large as a knockout rose. This is a Louisiana super plant for many of those reasons, and again, just look at this fiery color. It really even gets a little bit more intense as it starts to cool off in the season. Lime and chartreuse colors really show up in the fall landscape, and they play up against the reds and the oranges that we often see in many other flowers and plants. This is lemon coral sedum. This is another Louisiana super plant, and believe it or not, this will take freezes, it will take a lot of rainfall. It just looks fantastic all the time, and it's a great bedding plant to use as a border. Pentas are one of our favorite warm season bedding plants in Louisiana, but they also persist pretty long into the fall as long as we don't have a heavy frost. This was a new one to me this year. I don't think it's new on the market, but this is apple blossom, and I love the growth habit. It stayed really compact and bushy, but instead of having small leaves, it had larger leaves, and as you can see, we are getting a lot of pollinator activity on it still.
Loropetalum is a classic shrub for Louisiana landscapes. Typically, we get this really nice deep purple foliage throughout the garden, although there's some different colors and shapes that come with it. This is purple diamond, one of our larger specimens. Fantastic color. You can even see some of the flowers coming out in the blooms, but we're really going to get a lot of the blooms in the winter. If you walk over here, I could show you some variations that we get. One of our newer plants on the market that we really love is Cerise Charm, and here you can see Cerise Charm. You can see how different it is. Really compact, smaller growth habit, but you still get that great purple color. You can even see some of the blooms starting to come, although that's pretty early. We'll have more blooms for you in the winter video.
One of our favorite colors to see in the fall landscape is, of course, purple. But there's a trick to that, because sometimes your plants that look great in the fall may not be able to hold this color through the hot summer, but these particular grasses do. This is Princess Caroline grass, and it's called a dwarf Napier grass or a pennisetum, purple pennisetum grass. This particular one is one of our favorites out here because it actually stays about this height. Now, if you need something that's a little bit taller, you can always choose First Night, but we think that Princess Caroline actually works better in most landscapes because it's a little shorter.
Here we have Euryops High Noon, which, as you can see, produces a daisy-like flower along with fern-like foliage. It's really held up well through our wet summer. This is Blue My Mind Evolvulus. Now, in mild winters, this may perennialize for us, but typically we use it as a warm season bedding plant. This time of year it's still holding its nice blue color, which is really sought after in the landscape. Here we have Machu Morado Ruellia. We like this plant because it's low growing, stays compact, and multi-branching.
Basils are a popular culinary herb to grow during the summer because they really like hot weather. But if you let your basils go ahead and flower and go into the fall season, this is the benefit. Now at this point, a lot of these basils are probably too bitter to cook with, but look at the amount of pollinator activity that we're seeing all over these basil plants. This one in particular is African blue basil, and it gets really large in the landscape. And although it's not a nice little tidy meatball, the reason why I love this plant and its ranginess is because of this activity. I mean, this plant is providing a huge benefit for these pollinators right now. In keeping with the theme of talking about some less familiar or lesser known pentas varieties, I wanted to show you Stars and Stripes. It's a red flowering penta, but I love the white and green variegated foliage. It's probably one of the only variegated foliage pentas on the market. And it's pretty robust. As you can see, it's gotten about, 2.5, 3 feet tall. And then next to it is Pink Remembrance pentas. This is another larger penta. It doesn't stay in a nice little mound, but it's continuing to bloom and attract pollinators throughout the fall. So if you were able to watch our field day video this summer, you know that we featured this bed, which is our pollinator bed. And this is a collection of plants that we know are very beneficial to pollinators and are almost like super attractors for pollinators. So in the foreground, we have a porterweed, and this particular one is dwarf dark blue porterweed, which actually looks more purple to me, but it never gets taller than about 3 feet, so you don't have to worry about it going out of bounds like some of these larger porterweeds like the red one and the coral one in front of me. I also wanted to highlight this particular vine. It's one of my favorites. It's Mexican flame vine. It's a tropical, so it's not going to last from year to year, but look how bright orange the flowers are. And this is a great butterfly plant. There's no butterflies on it right now, but we've seen them here just a few minutes ago. And behind me, one of my favorite Kufias. This is giant Mexican cigar plant. This makes a huge statement in the landscape. I mean, look at this fiery color. It almost looks like candy corn. And as a comparison, behind me, this is David Verity Kufia. A little bit smaller plant, fits a little bit better in the landscape, but again, a great pollinator attractor, and these two plants will even attract hummingbirds. Not that this is something we're really proud about, but I wanted to take a moment to remind everybody about weed control in the fall. So a lot of times as we get like this lush growth in the summer, our plants will hide a lot of weeds that are growing underneath them. So as this Gara started to die back here in the pollinator bed, it revealed this stealthy chamber bitter weed. And this is a very common weed in Louisiana landscapes. And if you look at the seed pods that are underneath the leaves, each one of these contains multiple seeds. So if you don't catch this kind of stuff and pull it up in the fall, these are going to die back over the winter and drop their seeds. So in a way, you're going to be controlling the weed population for next summer by taking these out this fall and winter.
Here we have a hybrid dianthus called Mountain Frost. This color is ruby glitter, tolerating our wet summer well, and we really expect it now to start popping now that temperatures are dropping and we're starting to cool off here in the fall and winter time. Another color in the series we have is Ruby Snow, which is performing equally as well.
If you've been following the Hammond Research Station this year, you know that we absolutely love abelias. They have great pollinator interest, fantastic flowers, wonderful foliage colors, and year-round interest. And what you also probably know is this is one of our absolute favorites in the garden right now, and this is Peach Perfection Abelia. Throughout the summer, we have constant blooms of these flowers. You can still see a few remnants of the flowers hanging around. But what we see is these spent flowers that really hold on, and they actually make a really neat texture. We could see them from across the grounds, and they actually look kind of like flowers themselves. So you can see where it gets its name from this peach color in the leaves. And this changes throughout the year. You can actually see the range of colors that we're getting. We get a little of this newer growth, more tender. It's getting that darker burgundy to the peach right here. And as we go more into the winter, we'll get more of this burgundy, and it changes. Just a wonderful plant that we absolutely love here at Hammond Research Station.
Late summer and fall is definitely salvia season. And this is a particular collection in our salvia bed right here. Now some salvias are kind of interesting because they may just kind of sit there all summer long and not start blooming till the fall, like this one, but this really is putting on a great show. This is a variety of Salvia garnetica called Purple in Bloom. It's got this kind of this royal deep purple bloom that's really been going all season long, and you can again see, look how many pollinators are on this. Lots of honeybees and bumblebees. This is limelight salvia, and what makes this salvia so special are these bright chartreuse or lime green calyxes that accompany these royal purple blooms. Now it's, as you can see, we've already had a lot of bloom here. This is more of a fall blooming salvia, but has really put on a great show for us in the landscape, and the bees are still loving it, and you can see it from pretty far away because of these light green calyxes. Another Salvia garnetica is Blue Ensign, and these will usually perennialize for us. This one's a little bit different because it's probably one of the most intense blue colors of the salvias rather than fading into the purples.
So one of the plants we get asked the most about here at Hammond Research Station is this tricolor beach hibiscus. This is a tropical, used to be a hibiscus. It's no longer classified as a hibiscus, but this is not root hardy and it will not stay throughout our freezes. So you have to dig it up, bring it inside, or keep it for next year to bring it back out. But it grows pretty quick. But it's just a fantastic plant. We have it actually setting off our sign for the entrance of the Hammond Research Station. Speaking of hibiscus, this is Hibiscus acetosella, a true hibiscus, and this is actually Panama red. It does have flowers quite a bit, but it's grown for its foliage. It's great maroon foliage, dark red. It's also not hardy. It's tropical, so it will not make it through our frost, but we dig it up, we'll bring it back each year, and you can see how vigorous it is. Just a fantastic plant. So let's pop into the Margie H. Jenkins Azalea garden real quick to show you some characteristically Louisiana plants. And that is our fall blooming and our re-blooming azaleas. Now this is a perfect place for these azaleas because Miss Margie was responsible for bringing a lot of these re-blooming and fall blooming azaleas into the Louisiana nursery trade, especially Glendale and the Robin Hills. So I'm going to jump off camera real quick and let's bring you some of our favorite ones in the azalea garden right now. So another of our 2020 fall Louisiana super plant introductions is American Beautyberry, or Calicarpa americana. Now typically we think of this as an early fall, late summer plant for our gardens when the berries are at their most vivid in their peak. But as you can see here, even throughout the fall, we still have a lot of berries set, and these are really important for our landscapes. So as a lot of our other plants start to drop their fruit and go into dormancy, the birds don't have the food they need. And so this long lingering ability for the Calicarpa or the beautyberry to keep songbirds fed and keep food in there to attract these birds is just as important as pollinator attractors. So another shrub that just screams Louisiana in the south are camellias. And there's a couple different types of camellias, and these are camellias sasanquas, and we generally refer to them as sasanquas. They're camellias that really do well in full sun, and they're really in bloom right now. And there's so many camellia sasanquas in the trade, and there's so many here that we can't possibly show you them all. So we're going to show you a couple of them that are really good right now and in full bloom. And this is one of the ones that's in its peak bloom right now, and this is Jessica's Ruffles. You can see all the flowers, how dense they are, and so many more buds that are still to come. So this will bloom for a few weeks. The flowers provide so much nectar for the bees, and so these are actually great pollinator attractors. As a lot of our other flowers start to dwindle out throughout in the sun garden and throughout our landscapes, the camellias really start to pop, and these keep these bees with food source throughout the fall. Another of our favorite camellia sasanquas here at Hammond is Alabama Beauty. You can't really see it, but these are very tall, so you really see the range of what camellias can be, or sasanquas especially. These all provide great evergreen shrubs, and this one has really dark, nice foliage. You can see from the ground all the spent flowers, so this one comes out a little earlier than most, but it's still flowering, still looking good, still a fantastic addition to the landscape. A group of sasanquas we really like is October Magic. Now typically October Magic will be blooming in October like we normally think, but we had a really warm fall here, so these are a little delayed, but you can see they're just popping out. This is snow, and we really like snow, and we can't wait. We're about a week out till we see this start to come out. But as you can see, there's quite a variety of camellia sasanquas in the October Magic series, and they're all fantastic. I want to take a minute and point out one October Magic in particular, and this is Orchid. It's a little past its prime because Orchid actually did come out in October when they normally do. But we wanted to show this because it's such a fantastic form and habit. It's really dense, really bushy. You can see how the dark green foliage is just really solid coverage in here. Just a fantastic sasanqua for our market. The Sasanqua flower colors come in such a wide variety, not just the whites and light pinks that we've shown you before. You can see here, crimson and clover's got this really deep red crimson color, just fantastic. Even more deep red is ruby, also in the October Magic series. Fantastic plants for the landscape. So I'm a big fan of this camellia in particular, and this is Moonshadow. The reason I like it, it's got this really neat flower, and you can kind of see it's a little late in the season for Moonshadow, but it's a white flower with the pink on the edge, and it's really dense flower, and when this is in full bloom, it's just a spectacle. So one of my personal favorites out in our collection, Moonshadow. So here we have Dream Team, and you can really see a lighter shade of green than some of the other ones we're showing you. It's got that big green pop and really wide flowers, really neat. And over here, we have Dream Quilt, which is back to that darker Sasanqua foliage color and more pink flowers, but the flowers are more open. Just another characteristic, something really neat in the garden. So this is Feathered Edge, and what I really like about Feathered Edge is the really fine, small leaves. You still get that great color, really dense, beautiful flowers, but I like the small leaves on this one.
So early November is a little early in the year to be seeing some fall leaf color in Louisiana. But here in our Piney Woods garden, we're starting to see a few things like the Japanese maples change. So this particular one is called Wildfire, and while the leaves aren't very pretty, look how cool this year's growth is. I mean, you're actually getting this red color, and this is going to stay like this all winter long. Now behind me, we're getting some pretty good leaf color, and that particular selection is called Baton Rouge, which I think is pretty cool if you live in the Baton Rouge area. You might want to pick this one up for your garden. White Shishi Camellia is the long-awaited companion to Shishi Gashira, which is a Louisiana superplant. This white flowering form really answers a lot of consumer demand for white flowers on evergreen plants. This plant we expect to be somewhat of a shorter grower, short and wide, very much like Shishi Gashira. Leslie Ann Camellia is another Camellia Sasanqua as part of our superplant program. Now, one of the great things about this camellia, besides the beautiful bloom, is that this is a great plant choice for an application that can't accommodate a real wide or spreading Sasanqua. This one grows very upright and can get pretty tall. It can even be used as a screen or a hedge. Did you know that Gerbera daisies can also perform really well as a perennial in the landscape? Given proper drainage and a little protection from afternoon sun, some of these selections will come back year after year. This particular one is the Drakensberg series of hardy Gerberas. This particular color is Scarlet. This is from the Southern Living Plant Collection, and there are a number of colors available in this collection. Threalis is a landscape shrub that I really feel is still underutilized in Louisiana commercial landscapes. It has a nice fine leaf texture, really glossy leaves, and throughout most of the summer it's covered in these clusters of yellow flowers, which are still blooming, and we're here in November. Now, of course, we haven't had a freeze yet, but it's still looking really nice, and it requires little pruning because it stays in a nice, fairly even and uniform shape.
So that's going to conclude the 2020 Hammond Research Station Fall Interest Garden Tour. We really thank you for coming and visiting. I do want to tell you one last thing. A lot of the plants we had here, especially the bedding plants, were warm season plants. So we wanted to show you what's still lasting this late. In November, typically, we're going to pull all those plants up and we're going to start planting our cool season. So we don't recommend you plant any of those bedding plants right now. We just wanted to show you. For the LSU Ag Center and the Hammond Research Station, I'm Jeb Fields. This is Jason Stagg and Ashley Edwards, and we want to thank you so much for watching.